Um, yeah, we should do it basically. Ready. I just want to check the audio. I want also kind of to hear myself because I think I have the throat a little bit fucked up. I don't know. No, no, no. It is only on my hair, it seems. I'm going crazy. But yeah, here we are. Here we are. Um, let me do this. Beep, 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 beep. Welcome, everyone. Hello. Another beautiful morning in this case, in which we are going to keep studying. Today, in particular, we're going to go and analyze some stuff from completely random places. So yeah, we're going to see what ends up coming out of it. As always, hello, welcome everybody, welcome dear lurkers, beautiful watchers. In today's case, Runespoon and also we do not have a chat. I wanted to say it. We still do not have a chat. So it's I don't know what to really say. It is not that much annoying, but it still has a little bit of annoyance behind the fact that yeah, it doesn't really want to work or something like that. I don't know. Because we have the bots, it seems. Wait. Just in case, taking into consideration that the bot already died. Stream elements, what the fuck is going on? Anyways, well, we cannot, we cannot have the bot with us today. Quality content, basically. But yeah, let's see. We have, or well, I searched for two different videos. I tried to go for stuff that was interesting to me. One of them I already watched once, but it has one, two, three, four, five, six by six. It has 36 categories or 36 different types of information to absorb, so it is kind of hard to completely see everything that it has and memorize everything. Sorry, but anyways, let me link it to here. Let me pin it on the chat. There it is, pin, yeah, pin, and manually unpin, yeah. The after that, I think I shouldn't be forgetting about anything else, no? We have audio, we have, well, yeah, I need to activate this, mute this, and transition into here. And now, for real, we should be ready, no? To watch this. Every bias explained in 8 minutes. I think I don't have to accelerate the video into double speed or one quarter or faster or anything like that. So yeah, let us play.
Bias blind spot, the tendency to think that oneself is less affected by cognitive biases compared to others. Gambler's fallacy.
Okay. I don't remember what was the format. There are not that many examples given on the different biases that this guy talks about. Um, if I am not wrong, he covers every single one of them. If I am not wrong, so we shouldn't be preoccupied about having to see which ones are what and such. It so far, yeah, the format that we probably are going to utilize is something like a bias is explained, and at the very least, I will try to come up with an example or something akin to that. As I guess, not that I guess, I hope it ends up being more helpful, at the very least for me to understand what we are watching. Because if not, it gets kind of hard to guess on such content if I don't have the possibility of really learning from it. So yeah, the first one was self-bias or something like that, bias, and I guess, or I understand that it happens, but the reason as to why it happens, I will say probably because we seem to believe that when we know about things, in some cases, we believe that those things should not apply to us anymore. Like, yeah, basically, even in this same example, you could say that because you know you have a bias towards believing that you have no biases, you will start to believe that you're becoming less biased on your life, when in reality, there is no real correlation between understanding a concept like this and being more aware of the different other biases that might or might not apply on you, I guess. But yeah, it is interesting, I will say, because the possibility itself of learning about biases and integrating them properly into the different knowledges that we have wouldn't be so easy to have, I would say. So yeah, I don't think there is a. I mean, the solution would be to not try to believe that by knowing something you get rid of the possibility of that something happening or affecting you, but at the same time, how to properly do it is the real question. So, anyways, that is the feasible. Continue.
Gambler's fallacy happens when there's a tendency to think that future probabilities are altered by past events, when in reality they are unchanged. Omission bias.
Yeah, I mean, that was very interesting. It, it is one of the few biases that I try to remember the most because it happens. When, the best example is what happens when you play the roulette and such. If you believe that by having played, let's say, a green one, or not a green is kind of rare. If you have played red and it didn't happen that red came on the last two spins of the wheel, I don't know, of the roulette, it means that you should probably get rare. In reality, the chances are still the same. There is, unless the system itself is designed to auto-balance after a certain amount of, I don't know, outcomes in any kind of way, there is no real obligation for the system to force a result. The statistic themselves also doesn't or shouldn't indicate that it is something that is prone to happen because what I understand is in the cases in which your different understandings of the whole reality that you're observing also have the side, let's say, of every single part of it, also giving you the possibility, or not the possibility, rather simply giving you the notion that those realities by themselves should start to be changed. In those moments, it is that the bias takes a bigger form or stops being a bias, sorry. But what I will believe it like this. It happens that we attribute or thinking in the sense of, okay, because these past events are, or yeah, already happened, the next one should be like this in the sense of outcomes. As it might come, I believe, from a desire not only to win on one hand, because I will obviously attribute that to the interest that we have for things to go our way, but on the other, for a misunderstanding that we have about numbers, I will say, and statistic and such. Because yeah, I mean, there is, if you understand the game that you're playing and you understand that one possibility doesn't really affect the previous or the next one, then it is that you can start to more consciously do the correct things. But if you believe that, or if you have previous knowledge in other places where if by playing something or if by a certain event happening, others also raise their amount of happening, let's say, then you can properly believe and you can properly attribute that into something particularly not simply interesting but rather true. So I will say like this: there might also be kind of a confusion behind all of these different notions clashing one with the other. And I also hello Whiplash, welcome. We're today today we are first and foremost watching every bias explained in 8 minutes. That is probably going to take us like I don't know half an hour or so. But yeah, that is what we're doing. Now we were talking about gambler's bias, the one in which you believe that the previous outcomes should alter the results of the next one. Like, if you throw a coin, let's say 5 times in a row, and all of those 5 times it ends up being tails, you believe that the next one should be obviously or statistically speaking heads, when in reality every single throw of a coin is by itself uh, randomized. It isn't predetermined by what happened before. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It seems complex enough to the degree to which I wouldn't be able to really extract anything in particular. But well, I mean that's everything that I can say then. Continue. Omission bias.
It's the tendency to judge harmful actions as worse or less moral than equally harmful inactions. Proportionality bias. Our
What?
innate
What? What? But what? 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 Sorry, what? I
changed.
didn't understand it. What?
Omission bias. It's
Uh,
the tendency to judge harmful actions as worse or less moral than equally harmful inactions.
ah, okay, okay, okay. I didn't. Okay, 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 okay. Okay, yes, yes, yes. I didn't pay attention to the inaction part. Understandable. Perfectly understandable, my man. Yeah, I guess I will say in that sense, this bias is easily understandable when we see that in at least in some cultures we do not teach each other the importance of acting and the importance of actively doing the things that we know we should be doing instead of simply observing or deciding to not take action. Mm, if we do not teach it or different individuals in our societies that it is important to do the things that we feel or we know are necessary to do, then this omission bias ends up happening. In other cases, I will say it is more logical to believe and to even see that, yeah, you can avoid these kind of errors if you were to, I don't know, think simply somehow. If you were to comprehend properly the concepts that apply to the ways in which, by you doing the things you know that you have to do, you gain the things that, or you avoid the consequences of not taking action. But if we want to do it, I will say like this, properly seeing and even more properly absorbing all of that into the conscious mind requires a good training, because if not, we end up with what we have nowadays, and basically that is omission bias itself, believing that sometimes not taking action because it might as well be something that we can avoid is good or is somehow not so harmful, when in reality, even in this example itself, if you have the possibility of avoiding somebody getting beaten up, it means that you should try to do it unless you want a person to be harmed. And the problem is, are we capable of properly holding people accountable for this or not? And when we do not also have the capacity of doing it, we end up having the other problem that is, okay, you didn't take action at that point in time. You're a beast. I wouldn't say that the one who doesn't take that much action is a beast, in the same sense as the one who beat up somebody else isn't completely a beast, but that is something different. I mean, something different, something different. So yeah, basically that action and inaction.
Proportionality bias. Our innate tendency to assume that big events have big causes, which may also explain our tendency to accept conspiracy theories. Moral credential effect.
What?
It occurs when someone who does something
Well, I mean, oh, let me say like this. I understand it, but it is hard to really see cases in which things like this happens in reality, because how many how many times it is that somebody does something so insignificant to alter the whole course of events of something an uncertain amount of time down the line, incredibly important. Because here, for example, you can have a very clear one, like a kid threw a rock into a volcano, therefore it made it active. Okay, but I think it is kind of another bias to believe that every single thing has a tiny start also, or something like that. Because, for example, one of the main ideas that I remember when I tried to analyze this before is how much of a of an event is that you should have taken care of your car not working, or let's say one of your car tires is deflated, and you need to go and get it properly being on an usable state. And because you didn't do that, you decided to anyways drive towards your job and take the risk of going through the normal streets that you always go. Because of that, the moment in which you needed to stop at a red light, your tire, because it was deflated, it ended up making you drift, and because you drifted, you ended up crashing with another car. How much of a real event or how much of an starter it is that you ignored your tires? I mean, there might as well have been other parts into consideration, like for example, how fast were you going when you weren't able to really stop yourself at a red light? What else might have been there playing a role if you really try to attribute different responsibilities to all things that happen? I don't know. It is it is one of those weird ideas because out of nowhere, this particular bias makes me not believe, but rather, let's say, uh, get unnecessarily anxious for the sake of trying to see an, a cause of every single thing on such minor events that they might as well be almost force parts of the whole chain of events, not really natural things that made it happen, but rather human made, let's say, conscious choices of starting points for it. So yeah, I don't know.
To accept conspiracy
But
theories. Moral credential effect. It occurs when someone who does something good gives themselves permission to be less good in the future. Self-serving.
I never understood it was. I understand the concept of yes, you can you might I think it is talked about later on that if you see somebody doing something good, you believe they are good in the future also for the sake of establishing an understanding about their character as a whole when that might not be true. But I don't see how somebody it is hard to believe that because you did something good, you believe you have the possibility of doing something bad. Like maybe if your whole moral compass mm, or your whole vision of the world makes you believe that by doing something bad you have the possibility, or not doing something bad, the opposite. By doing something good, you have later on the possibility of doing something bad. You gain anything, or you equal things because you did earlier something good or something like that. I don't know. The example itself of the weights here is what makes me think that, but I don't know. It is still is weird to see it.
Bias. It's the tendency to claim more responsibility for successes than failures. Framing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. I, I mean, the whole self-serving bias is the notion that we also do not like. It isn't that it simply happens like that. We have a great incapacity of admitting that our errors are a part of us also, and not that they simply happen out of nowhere. If we somehow had the chance of observing all of our, not simply errors, all of our events and all of the things that we do, and know that they happen because of us, it will be easier. But because we also have feelings and because we also attribute sentiments into different things, it is that we have a hard time really saying, okay, this one in particular happened because of this or because of that. When in reality, almost all of the things that in our close vicinity of reality happens is to a high degree influenced by our own existence, not by other almost meaningless things, I would say. But yeah, it is also understandable.
Effect. The framing effect is the
Framing.
tendency to draw different conclusions from the same information, depending on how that information is presented. This includes the contrast effect, which is the enhancement or reduction of a certain stimulus's perception when compared with a recently observed
But,
contrasting object. Actor
well, I mean, speaking about the concept of framing, one of the few things that I remember is framing itself is kind of hard to come across when you're studying things by yourself. It happens more when you find those concepts, let's say, spread around you or presented to you by different actors of your environment, be them whoever they are. If the one who is trying to feed you information is not capable of conveying every single thing, you might as well get manipulated into believing that something is one way or another. On one hand, on the other, yeah, I wouldn't say that every single one of those cases is like that, because to a certain degree, you also have to accept as a consumer of knowledge that you have the responsibility of properly checking if what you're learning is true or not. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it is understandable because at the same time, it represents the notion and the understanding properly of, okay, to which degree can I say that I know something if I only know about a part of it and I only comprehend the bad or the good things that it has, let's say, because also it makes you more prone to take a certain kind of action when you know only a portion of the whole knowledge that there is about anything. If you do not have the complete understanding about anything, you will not be as capable as someone who has all of the pieces of the puzzle that is that part of that piece of knowledge itself, mm, to be able to interact with those different objects in life. So yeah, I don't know. It is interesting, but I don't know if there is a real solution for it or not. As yeah, yeah. Aside from
certain
learning.
stimulus's perception when compared with a recently observed contrasting object. Actor-observer bias. It's the tendency for explanations of other individuals' behaviors to overemphasize the influence of their personality and underemphasize the influence of their situation, and for explanations of one's own behaviors to do the opposite.
Well, I mean, in that same sense, it's kind of as what happens. The actor observer bias is what might as well exist on almost every single one of the different biases. In we do not want to attribute so much responsibility to ourselves in that same sense. If we were capable of doing it, eh, most of the biases wouldn't really exist. And the biggest, I don't know if concern or not, simply thing that happens is we need to properly not be so worried about this stuff. And yeah, if we never fix those problems, we never have the chance of solving all the pieces of the puzzle altogether. But at the same time, taking so much responsibility makes you, mm, I would say, doesn't make you anything in particular. Rather, you should know how to properly take that much amount of responsibility. Let's say like that simply. If you have the possibility of taking as much responsibility as you can, you will have an easier time because you will also notice how different things happen because of you. But if on the opposite, if you never do it, you will live a more blended and misty life because you believe that things simply happen to you instead of being things that are happening because of you. So yeah, I don't know, crazy and picture bias.
Picture superiority
No,
effect. The notion that concepts that are learned by viewing pictures are more easily and frequently recalled than are concepts that are learned by viewing their written word form counterparts. Outcome bias.
what?
Called than are concepts that are learned by viewing their written.
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I understand it a little bit more, like put like that. I mean, one of the few problems that happens is we somehow believe we are almost above all the things that have to deal with simple vision, let's say. And I mean, there are a lot of different things playing a role here because going more deep into what the whole scientific world knows, the human is a more visual animal, let's say. So if we didn't have such a hard time separating what we already knew from before for the sake of learning something new or adapting something completely unrelated almost, this wouldn't happen so much. But if we cannot properly understand that text is also a visual input, then it ends up becoming harder for us to really comprehend what is it that is being talked about. And also, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't try to defend the bias itself. I was going to say something like, in some cases, images can convey a whole set of words, like probably you understand that this means this, no? But I don't know. Craziness. Let's leave it at that. Let's continue.
Word form counterparts. Outcome bias. It's the tendency to judge a decision by its eventual outcome instead of the quality of the decision at the time it was made. Mere exposure effect.
I mean,
Its
what?
eventual outcome instead of the quality of the decision at the time it was made.
Well, ah, yeah, 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 yeah. I understand it. I understand. I mean, what happens here, or what I understand happens here, is this bias exists because we possess an ego, and if we didn't have it, we wouldn't really have the capacity also of knowing if our actions are good or not. It has more to deal with the fact that what we do is better or worse. If we didn't have the capacity of measuring our actions like that, it will not be a bias. But at the same time, not measuring our actions represents a huge problem because it means that we're not having the possibility of drawing the line between what happened before and what happens now, let's say. But I don't know. No, wait. Yes. I mean, the other side of this is this happens because of that. Yes, but also it happens because having a super inflated ego makes you believe that your actions carry more weight than what they really have. When in reality, for example, here, when you're playing against random odds, you shouldn't believe that you have the capacity of making a good decision. It is randomness, and you simply had the chance of choosing something somehow good. If it was something that had in any way to deal with skill, it will be true. But in the cases of randomness, yes, it makes more sense. Let's leave it like at that, I would say. But yeah, I mean, pretty understandable this one.
Mere exposure effect. The mere exposure effect is a psychological phenomenon by which people tend to develop liking or disliking for things merely because they are familiar with them. Hard, easy effect.
I mean, it is not simply a bias, it is more like an interesting thing that happens. developing familiarity with things makes you more comfortable with them if you do not have a bad opinion. And having a bad opinion about things that you constantly see makes you get angrier if you, in neither of those cases, address that it is happening. But yeah, I don't think there is anything bad with that. I mean, there are other biases that are worse, let's say. And if you are bettering something by simply being exposed to it, good for you. So yeah, let's continue.
To develop liking or disliking for things merely because they are familiar with them. Hard, easy effect. It's the tendency to overestimate one's ability to accomplish hard tasks and underestimate one's ability to accomplish easy ones. Survivor
I mean, hard easy. It happens that yeah, this is also mentioned later on, but is similar to the concept of that one bias where you believe that you are better at things where you don't know so much. And when you know something, you believe that you are bad at it because you also know how much you are lacking in the sense of even further developing your skills on that field. But yeah, I mean, it happens, my bro. What to do
Survivorship
about it?
bias. Survivorship bias happens when concentrating on the people or things that survived some process and inadvertently overlooking those that did not because of their lack of visibility. Baader-Meinhof phenomenon.
Okay, okay, okay. There it is. No, I mean, no, I don't get it. No, sorry.
Bias happens when
Replay.
concentrating on the people or things that survived some process and inadvertently overlooking those that did not because of their lack of visibility. Baader-Meinhof
Okay, but I mean, ignorance, basically. No, because, yeah, I would say like that. Ignorance, amazing. Wow. I don't know. Is it really something to address here? I mean, who doesn't get or has a moment of ignorance when we say, wow, yeah, this particular thing is so incredibly important compared to everything else. But I don't know. I wouldn't say that it is. I don't know. No, no, no. I was going to say I don't think it is negative. Rather, let me say like this: there is a part of a consequence having to deal with the notion of us observing the different realities that have to deal with almost everything. Yes, on one side, but on the other, if we also notice that let's say like this, if we notice that tendencies exist, we tend to make them more important than what they are, probably in some cases, because we want to draw those tendencies and have them outlined for the sake of repeating those things in particular. I mean, for example, something that happens most of the time is when we are talking about business, you wouldn't start a business with no money. Why? Because one of the few tendencies that has been shown is every business needs to start with something, and those that survive have done so mostly, or not mostly, partially because one of the things that happens is they had already a funding, and because they had a funding, they had the possibility of spending more, and because they had the possibility of spending more, they had the possibility of surviving more, and blah blah blah, so on and so forth. So yeah, I mean, I do not see it as something that much bias. Rather, it is an almost an instinct that we have to try and draw conclusions from different events in life to see what the commonalities of those things are for the sake of having a less of a hard time comprehending them.
phenomenon. The Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, also called frequency
But
illusion, is the illusion where something that has recently come to one's attention suddenly seems to appear with very high frequency shortly afterwards. The reality is that before we placed our attention on that element, we just ignored it. Availability
well, I mean, yeah, I was thinking about it from the sense of we tend to ignore the things that do not matter to us. It is as simple as that. This is one of the few things that doesn't really need that much explanation. If we do not care about what is happening, why would we try to care? There is no real reason for us to start caring about things that do not care. Simply as simple as that. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, that's that much. I mean, if we had the possibility of caring, we will notice so much more. But also, our conscious mind, and almost our unconscious mind too, decides to limit what can we can care and what we cannot care about for the sake of having a more broad observance of those things. For example, on the case of knowing or not knowing about Teslas, as it was shown there on the video, you start to care about Teslas because now you also own a Tesla and you will want to know if there start to be a common problem uh, that happens through all different Teslas. That's why you out of nowhere start to notice more of those previously existing, but before noticed Teslas. For the sake of seeing, is there might be something to notice also, or there might be something important that you were not seeing before because you had no necessity of observing that. So yeah, continue.
Availability heuristics. The availability heuristic is the tendency to overestimate the likelihood of events that easily come to mind. The availability of memories can be influenced by how recent they are or how unusual or emotionally charged they may be.
Well, I mean, yeah. The problem with this is we tend to attribute importance to the things that are, and he said it there, one of the most important factors is, in reality, emotions. If we attribute too much emotions into something, it becomes incredibly important for us. If we had the possibility of separating our emotions from the different events and only observe chances, we wouldn't have that much of a bias, let's say it like that. But I don't know. Um, on on the mind sense, let's say like this. On the mind side, we developed that for the sake of I saw this happening out of nowhere so much, and yeah, even if it wasn't out of nowhere, even if it has been predicted recently because it happened, it is important, and because I also feel something when it happens, I tend to. mm, There was some, for example, here only negative examples of not wanting to associate with those things. But on the opposite end, it also happens that you might get pressured to do things that you didn't even think about before. Because you start to notice how many people is also being sentimental about those things. It is a more complex array of things than to simply say, wow, this doesn't happen, or this happens like this. But I don't know.
Dunning-Kruger effect. It's the tendency for unskilled
There it is.
individuals to overestimate their own ability and the tendency for experts to underestimate theirs.
There it is. This is what I wanted to talk about. When this guy mentioned the other, we believe that we can do things that are hard, and we believe that we can do things that are easy. Basically, this. I think there is literally, yeah, basically that is another name for the same effect. We don't notice that we are masters at something and that we have an easy time doing it. While on the other side, we believe we are incredibly capable of doing something good when we are barely learning about it. So yeah, let's continue.
Individuals to overestimate their own ability and the tendency for experts to underestimate theirs. Halo effect. It's the tendency for a person's positive or negative traits to spill over from one personality area to another in others' perceptions of them.
What?
Pygmalion.
Okay, okay,
Spill
okay.
over from
Let me
one
see.
personality area to another in others' perceptions of them.
Okay, there it is, there it is. I remember learning about this, and it happens because we want to attribute the biggest amount of things, no matter if they are good or bad, about anything to anybody if it is possible. So we start to grab from what we already know, and we keep building and building concepts for the sake of making that person more solid in our mind, let's say. If they are good, we start to grab what we already know that they are good at, and we start to infer that, okay, let's say you're a good person, then probably you're going to be a good parental figure. Because if you're a good person, you might as well be also good with kids. And because you're good with kids, you might as well be also suited to have a child, and so on and so forth. And it is built because we want to have a broader sense or a broader understanding or an easier time also of understanding our reality instead of being so confused with every single thing that happens inside of it for the sake of differentiating what is real and what is not. But I mean, it isn't that easy to overcome. You need to get rid of the necessity of making the world make sense, and instead you only need to be an observant almost. Because if you didn't worry about what is happening, you wouldn't really believe that what is existing right now is like that. You will constantly be only observing and accepting as facts what you can say. And sometimes inferring information is part of the process itself. I don't know. Pygmalion effect.
Pygmalion effect. The phenomenon whereby others' expectations of a target person affect the target person's behavior in a self-fulfilling prophecy. Decoy effect.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, okay, okay. I remember this. Another good explanation is by telling someone the outcome that we want, we change the outcome that happens. By telling someone, if we do not interact with them, this has to deal with what kind of we learned the other day about recognition and such on what was it, jury duty? I don't remember. When people had to go and recognize the assaultants of their crime, things like that. If you are told that you should identify someone, for example, you start to change the notions of that particular victim. And even more if you start also to play with the different things that they might say, like, yeah, remember that you said this guy had black hair, for example, when their memories might be fuzzy about those things. But I don't know, it's staying silent might make things harder. Because if you do not know what different expectations others have about you, sometimes it is hard to perform to their standards when you have none. So yeah, I don't know. Interesting.
This bias is widely used in marketing. It's the phenomenon whereby consumers will tend to have a specific change in preference between two options when also presented with a third option that is asymmetrically dominated. An option is asymmetrically dominated when it is inferior in all respects to one option, but in comparison to the other option, it is inferior in some respects and superior in others. Selection bias
Okay, okay. Let me see it like once again because
is widely used in marketing.
what?
It's the phenomenon whereby consumers will tend to have a specific change in preference between two options when also presented with a third option that is asymmetrically dominated. An option is asymmetrically dominated when it is inferior in all respects to one option, but in comparison to the other option, it is inferior in some respects and superior in others.
Okay, let's say like this. Probably the observance and the well, I will say like this almost also. The desire to change how the consumers interact with your product makes you try to influence them, and that is why if the consumer itself is not aware about your tactics, they might never realize that it happens. I think, what was it, for example? I, I wanted to say names, but I don't remember even other names aside from AMD and such. I think it was AMD and Razer and all of those companies on the digital market that they inflated some previous prices for the sake of making the new things seem more valuable for the sake of selling those things instead of anything else. But it really isn't that preoccupying. I mean, if you can see it, you should try to be able to avoid it. You only need to be consciously watching out for it. At the end of the day, it doesn't really mean that you're okay. You saw it, then you are going to automatically change your view on everything else, and you're going to only buy what we are feeding you. I don't know.
Selection bias. Selection bias is the bias introduced by the selection of individuals, groups, or data for analysis in such a way that proper randomization is not achieved, thereby failing to ensure that the sample obtained is representative of the population intended to be analyzed. Anchoring
Okay, that is. I would say, yeah. I mean, the problem is this bias is more than anything else when conducting studies and such. We cannot really extract it into normal reality. I would say. Well, might as well be important to have it in mind because when we also try to have examples and such, we do not correctly assess how much of an important thing it is to not confuse ourselves about what we are seeing and what we are not seeing. But yeah, I mean, interesting anyways.
bias. The anchoring bias is the tendency to rely too heavily on one trait or piece of information when making decisions, usually the first piece of information acquired on that subject. This is why first impressions are so important. They paint a picture of what the other person is, and that picture gets anchored, making it hard to change. This bias is often exploited during negotiations. When the seller gives a seemingly unreasonable high price, that price becomes the starting point for the negotiation, and the buyer inadequately adjusts from it. Confirmation bias.
Well, I mean, the funny thing is you can manipulate things if you know it. You can change different outcomes because you can force things by observing that by simply being a certain way, people might as well observe you more in that light on one side and on the other. Yeah, even the example itself of wanting to sell stuff gives you a good lesson as to where to try and start with. Because if you're not sure about what you or why you should be trying to intentionally change different things happening in the sense of making them all be a certain way, you might as well never realize that they ended up being that particular way because of your actions. But yeah, I mean, I think the importance of knowing it is to avoid being manipulated, probably something like that. But yeah, there is not that much to really extract from it by simply trying to analyze it. Yeah, I think I don't know. Continue.
Bias. Confirmation bias is the tendency to search for, interpret, focus on, and remember information in a way that confirms one's preconceptions. Overconfidence
Well, I mean, yeah. The or preconceptions shape our world, my man. We cannot avoid to make what we know interfere with what we want to know or what we want to keep seeing. It is the same thing as what happened before. It was changing the outcome of something because okay, changing the outcome of someone because you told them how you wanted them to perform. If you have a kind of knowledge about how things should be, you work or everything else starts to work more properly for that particular thing to make more sense. Kind of hard to not see like that. I don't know. I don't know.
focus on and remember information in a way that confirms one's preconceptions. Overconfidence effect. The overconfidence effect is the tendency to have excessive confidence in one's own answers to questions. For example, for certain types of questions, answers that people rate as 99% certain turn out to be wrong 40% of the time. Egocentric bias.
Well, I mean, it is the same thing as with what was explained before. You tend to not attribute so many good things to negative events that happen to you in the sense of not so many things, so many responsibility to those events. The opposite also happens because you want to make yourself look or not look to others, seem good to you for the sake of knowing that what you did seems to be the correct pathway. If you notice so much your flaws, you will also have to deal with the notion that we are incredibly flawed, and it is almost impossible to get rid of them. You can only work on them, you can only get rid of a portion of them, but more and more problems will keep arising as you keep working more and more on them. So yeah, I don't know. I would simply say probably to stay vigilant about how much of an notion we have about things in the sense of altering what we already know and what's not. So yeah, continue.
Egocentric bias is the tendency to rely too heavily on one's own perspective or have a higher opinion of oneself than reality. Examples of this are the false consensus effect, which is the tendency for people to overestimate the degree to which others agree with them, and the false uniqueness bias, which is the tendency of people to see their projects and themselves as more singular than they actually are. Information bias.
Well, I mean, it is still in that sense realm of knowledge. You believe that you're doing something good, therefore you attribute more qualities because you want to know that you're doing good. In some cases, it also happens that, as it was shown on the second example, you believe or you start to influence or to try to influence others' notions about things because you want to have them properly mapped into reality. And you want to know that not only you see it like that, but your whole society sees it like that. So, yeah, interesting.
Information bias is a cognitive bias to seek information when it does not affect action. Hindsight bias. The hindsight bias
What?
they
What?
actually are. Information bias. Information bias is a cognitive bias to seek information when it does not affect action.
What? I'm stupid. Why do I don't get it?
Information
What?
bias is a cognitive bias to seek information when it does not affect action.
What? I'm stupid. Why do I not get it? What? Once again.
Information bias is a cognitive bias to seek information when it does not affect action.
Eh, what? I mean, something like we believe that things are more important than what they really are for the sake of, or because we think that learning about them makes them clear. What the fuck? I don't get it. What? What is the point being made here? What? Something like we want to know about things. Therefore, we study as much as we can about different sides. And when we do not comprehend what we should be studying, we end up going towards stuff that is completely unrelated. Something like that. No?
Hindsight bias. The hindsight bias is sometimes called the I knew it all along effect, and it is the common tendency
Mhm.
for people to perceive past events as having been more predictable than they actually were. Projection for
What?
people to perceive past events as having been more predictable than they actually were.
I mean, yeah. It, it is. Okay, let me simply say it like this. It is one of those other events in which you want to attribute to you as much qualities as you can. And if you said something and it happened, you will start to believe that you're right. And if it happens 100 times, you will almost feel that you're a visionary or stuff like that because you can quote unquote properly see reality. So yeah,
Projection
understandable.
bias.
I mean,
It's the tendency to overestimate how much one's future selves will share one's current preferences, thoughts, and values, thus leading to suboptimal choices. Apophenia.
I mean, this okay. I remember studying about it some time ago. This one in particular happens because we forget about how much we change as individuals, and we do not appreciate how much our journey through life might make us completely leave things behind. So that is why, by having those things happening in us, we tend to believe that we are as, or that we are going to be, sorry, as equal as we are right now. When in reality, we change so much that through time we might as well not even be the same person that we were years ago, let's say.
Apophenia is the tendency to perceive meaningful connections between unrelated things. This bias is
Yeah.
one of the ways a stereotype can lead people to expect certain groups and traits to fit together, and then to overestimate the frequency with which these correlations actually occur. Another type of apophenia is pareidolia, which happens, for example, when you see images of animals in the clouds. Serial position
Well, I mean, that is what I was talking about. If you live, you want to attribute logic to things, therefore you make it seem like things are more correlated than what they really are. As simple as that. If we didn't have a necessity for that to happen, like in the sense of we need to make sense out of what we see. If we didn't need that, we wouldn't be here because we would be doing what feels the best out of nowhere every single time. We're not learning about the stuff because we have also the preconception of maybe if we learn about something, we are going to progress towards anything else or stuff like that. When in reality, if you never stop to try and learn, you never obtain information about anything in particular. So yeah, understand what I mean? Continue.
effect. The serial position effect is the tendency of a person to recall the first and last items in a list better than the middle ones. Recency bias.
Well, I mean, what I can tell you, my man. Yes, you can only recall things that happen at first and at last because your memory itself makes you hold them more properly. You can avoid it or you can change the way in which that happens by altering the order of things and by altering also how they are presented. Instead of a list, for example, a random assert of them and such. But yeah, happens.
The recency bias gives greater importance to the most recent event, such as an interviewer who can vividly remember just the last person he interviewed because they're the most recent conversation they had. It's related to the serial position effect. Authority bias.
Mhm.
Authority bias
Yeah, basically that's yeah, basically that. And also it is quote unquote related. Stream Elements is working. Wait. Stream Elements, are you fucking working? Let me see. We have it working. My fucking god, we have the array message. Let me copy it already. Let's fucking go. Quality. Anyways, basically that. But yeah, no, I didn't pay attention. My mind completely erased what already. Ah, yeah. It was about. It also has to deal not only that you remember what happens more vividly last, because your memory can hold the last event more properly, but also that you make sense out of things by focusing on them. If you do not focus on what happens, you delete those memories, let's say. But yeah, I mean, normal, no?
bias is the tendency to attribute greater accuracy to the opinion of an authority figure, no matter what the opinion's content is. Unit bias. The standard
What?
suggested
Ah!
amount of consumption
I misclick, sorry. misclick. Misclick. I misclick, sorry. I didn't intend to do that. I
Authority
changed
bias is
the.
the tendency to attribute greater accuracy to the opinion of an authority figure, no matter what the opinion's content is.
Well, I mean, brother, how many times I am going to repeat the same concept here? It happens that we attribute more importance to what someone important might say because they are important and because they might have understanding about those things more than us. We want to make sense out of what we see. And if we know that somebody is good at knowing stuff, we incorrectly attribute them knowledge about things that might as well not have anything to do to deal with their field of expertise. So yeah, I mean, interesting.
Unit bias. The standard suggested amount of consumption, like the food serving size, that's perceived to be appropriate. A person would consume it all, even if it was too much for that particular person. Availability cascade.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would say like this. Sadly, it happens that we forget about our existence as individuals in some cases. And when we have a standard, we believe that we need to fit into those standards without really seeing how important it is to not try and change our existence into them for the sake of fitting them, but rather seeking our survival to the most optimal level. So yeah,
It's a self reinforcing process in which a collective belief gains more and more plausibility through its increasing repetition in public discourse. It can be summarized in the phrase repeat something long enough and it will become true. It's related to the availability
yeah,
heuristic, bandwagon.
yeah. I think I kind of mentioned it. Nah, mentira. Sorry, I didn't. I probably didn't mention it. But yeah, it happens that we tend to, yeah. If something is said long enough, you believe it, unavoidable. What you see the most happening, or what you hear the most being quote unquote real, you believe it to be real. You have no reason to not do that. So why would you not do it? So yeah, interesting.
Effect. It's the tendency to do things because many other people do the same. This effect can happen for two reasons: conformism, when someone wants to fit in with others, or lack of information, where the person thinks that the opinion of many people is probably more accurate than just his. Illusory truth.
Yeah, and it is kind of the same thing as what was said before. The concept of you believing that you need to fit into the margins of what an expert says. But yeah, it is unavoidable to believe that society itself is going to be right about what is happening. If you do not know that sometimes, as an individual, you might have the possibility of showing your whole society that they might be wrong. So yeah,
Truth
continue.
effect. People are more likely to identify as true statements those they have previously heard, even if they cannot consciously remember having heard them. Next in line effect. When
Well, I mean, how to avoid believing that things that are repeated enough, or that have been repeated through long periods of time enough, are real or not? How to avoid it? How? Well, I mean, no, kind of obvious. Eh? You simply need to check. If the information is said, you need to check it. Simple as that.
When taking turns speaking in a group using a predetermined order, like going clockwise around a room, people tend to have diminished recall for the words of the person who spoke immediately before them. In group bias.
Well, I mean, this is also once again, sadly, what has to deal with the bias of order. You remember, you have to process information in a manner in which everything makes sense and integrate the different narratives. If you have so many people telling all at once, you will have a hard time because you need to check what was said by you, then you need to check what was said by the second individual and you, then you need to check what was said by the third actor, the second individual and you, then you need to check what was said with, by the fourth person, by the third actor, the second individual, and you. And when you get to the fifth guy, you can't even remember at some points what was said by the rest because you need to constantly keep checking and checking and checking. So yes, it is incredibly hard to have such a long conversation with anybody or
In
with a
group
group of
bias is
people
the
like that.
tendency for people to give preferential treatment to others they perceive to be members of their own groups. It usually happens because we encounter and interact with people in our group much more frequently than with strangers. This makes people in our group seem unique, while people outside of our group seem boring and conformist. The mere exposure effect also plays a role in this bias. Spotlight effect.
Yeah, basically that's what I wanted to say. If you, I mean, it can be shortened to too many mere exposure, too much mere exposure. If you were to notice that the world itself isn't so bad, you wouldn't have the possibility of being so considered in your interactions with your different communities. But at the same time, if you do that, you're also opening yourself to the possibility of being hurt by the different completely known actors that are outside of your community, the one that you already know is might be good. So yeah, kind of weird and kind of hard to survive this, my man.
It's the sensation that everybody is focused on us that comes from overestimating the extent to which other people notice our appearance or behavior. Choice supportive bias.
Well, I mean, why wouldn't you believe that you're important? How to avoid believing that we're important, my man? How to? We're individuals and we want to fit in society while at the same time trying to maintain our uniqueness. How to not believe that we are more important than what we really are? Huh?
The tendency to remember our choices as better than they actually were, because we tend to over-attribute positive features to options we chose and negative features to options not chosen. Ostrich effect. People tend to
Yeah. Obviously, we try to disregard the things that we do not want. That is why, in the cases in which things go our way, we start to also notice and pick up other possible reasons as to why it happened like that, instead of saying, "Wow, I made a good decision." As simple as that.
bury their head in the sand and avoid potentially negative but useful information just to avoid psychological discomfort. Selective perception bias.
I mean, a question. No, what? What? No, no, I didn't get it. What?
Ostrich
Let
effect.
me let me watch
People
this.
tend to bury their head in the sand and avoid potentially negative but useful information just to avoid psychological discomfort. And avoid potential not chosen.
I am stupid.
Ostrich effect. People tend to bury their head in the sand and avoid potentially negative but useful information just to avoid psychological discomfort.
I mean, okay, okay. Let's say like this: we want to not expose ourselves to danger. Why would we expose ourselves to any kind of danger when we can not do that? Kind of. That is why that is where I see that coming from.
Selective perception bias. It's the tendency not to notice and more quickly forget stimuli that cause emotional discomfort and contradict our prior beliefs. Peak end rule. Quickly
What?
forget stimuli that cause emotional discomfort and contradict our prior beliefs.
Ah, yeah. Well, this is this is what was said before, my man. You believe that your choices are great, and you also make more sense of what you chose, or what in some cases can't even change, because you want to not find yourself surrounded by so much negativity. Unavoidable.
Peak end rule. People seem to perceive not the sum of an experience, but the average of how it was at its peak and how it ended. I'll be making similar videos.
There it is, my man. That's the peak. I mean, interesting enough. Also, it happens that we have the tendency to feel like that because we believe it is easier to do it, and also because sadly it takes too much time for us to go through every single part of our experiences to say and to really address if they are like that or not. So we have an easier time only checking the good at the end, and sometimes the lowest point also. But yeah, interesting. Interesting so far. But well, somehow we were. I spent more than what I ever expected to spend on an 8 minute video. So that's all for now. Amazing content, basically, as they would say. Content analysis, content digestion, as they will somehow put into other words. I don't know. Amazing. We did it. We did it. At the very least, we finished this stream. So um, very well, very good, very nice. Um, now let me see. Can we finish this with a banger of a raid? Can we go into somewhere and give people a raid? Yeah, can we try to do that? People, yeah? Let me see. But well, I wanted to say, as always, thanks for being here. I think this one in particular was very interesting. I this video I try to watch it kind of often because in a sense we were very affected by biases and whatnot. So trying to avoid them is what makes it um, I wouldn't say easier, but simply makes it a better experience. I wouldn't completely also try to say that it simply happens in some cases that by changing what we have and what we do not have, we have an easier time. But I don't know, experiencing things also is great. So, anyways, people, as I said, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. As always, I enjoy being here. It was a nice stream. Sorry if it was too short. Mm, Be well. Research. Onoiro. What? Onair. Oneiros. How can I? Oneirosophy. There it is. Yeah. Let me. I had an incredibly hard time mentioning that word, but yes, I will try to study that. Let me copy that word just now because I don't even remember having seen that word in my whole existence. What? But yeah. Thank you. I will do it. And oneirosophy. What the hell is that? Yeah. Let me read. It is getting late, and the food will end up arriving, and I will be still here, so I will not be able to eat. But well, thanks for being here, people. Sorry, sorry, I I mismatched my words. But well, we are going to read where. Let's go here. Let's go. I don't know when was the last time that I read it here or not. So let's go here. Slash raid Saira Bitrom, who is playing Pocket Mirror. I don't even know what that game is. We're going all of us to experience that at first hand. But yeah, as I said, thanks for being here. Thanks for the opportunity as always. I hope you enjoyed whatever happened here. And well, next time we're going to. What do we have on the schedule next? I don't know. Well, when it arrives, we're going to preoccupy ourselves with the next stream. Yeah. Until then, remember to stay safe. Thanks for watching, for lurking, for watching the vote, for talking, for every single thing. Thanks. Stay safe, stay hydrated, stay rested, stay well. And whenever it happens, we will get back here. And until then, goodbye. Thanks for all. And yeah, there it is the red message. Now, yeah, goodbye. Right. And thanks. Right.